First player born in 1993 to appear in the major leagues, and he cranks one high and deep to right field. It is way back. Goodbye. Welcome to the big leagues. A home run in his first major league at bat.
First time up in the big leagues. Here's the 1-1 pitch. He swings and hits a high fly ball to left field. It's deep. It's up and away into the last row of the bleachers. In his first major league at bat.
Welcome to the Prospect Promotion Incentive, a podcast covering the players climbing the minor league ladder on their way to dominate the future of Major League Baseball. Here are your hosts, Beck and Scully.
Hello, everyone. Today is Thursday, July 3rd, and we've got some ball to talk about. But before we get into all of that, I want to plug some of the different ways you can find and support the podcast and our other accounts. So we've got the Twitter account at Promo Incentive. And then we have recently began dabbling into the YouTube space. You can check out our channel at Prospect Promotion Incentive in case you want to put some faces to our voices and our names here. And just ask that you would please download, rate, subscribe, do all of those things you do with podcasts on both Apple and Spotify. Help us get the word out. But with all that out of the way, Beck, how are we doing?
We're doing great. It has been an interesting last couple of days for me. I saved these stories so I could tell you live and sort of get your live reaction. A few weeks ago, my wife and I were supposed to go to Kansas City for a long weekend, and our plans fell through. It was sort of a big bummer. And so to make it up to her, I booked a trip to Duluth, Minnesota last weekend and found a really nice sort of boutique hotel. And, you know, we packed up the car, we made the 2.5-hour drive to our hotel. And when we arrived, we found that it had burned to the ground that morning. So that was a little bit challenging. We gave the folks a call and they didn't answer initially. So we called their other property and they told me, check your spam folder. We alerted you to this a couple of hours ago. And I said, if you know what's in my spam folder, why not just give me a call? It worked out. We found another hotel. We just cut the stay short for one night. And, we ended up having a fantastic sort of 24 or 36 hours together. But that was a bit of a shock pulling up and seeing, the remains of where we were going to stay.
That is insane. Reply to that. Check out the YouTube so you can see how agape my mouth was at that news. That's preposterous. That's some sitcom level happenings. The morning of, did you get any details on what happened?
There were no details shared. I have been sort of searching the news to see if there's anything on there. And, there's no real reporting on it. I suppose the bright side is that we didn't stay there Thursday night because that would have been a much more devastating experience, I'm sure.
Yeah. Holy cow.
So that's story number one that I wanted to get your live reaction to. I sat on that information for days.
I can't believe that.
Much more recently, we've been working on some landscaping projects. The most recent thing has been a cowboy pool, which is essentially an 8-foot diameter stock tank. It holds about 700 gallons of water. We picked up one of those, and so I was outside before we hit record on the podcast, drilling some holes in it to put a pump and what have you. And our dog would not stop hanging out by the window well. I just assumed she dropped her tennis ball in there. A full family of bunnies in the window well would have certainly died. So I rescued a family of bunnies. I had to hop down in there with some gloves on and come to the rescue. So, I feel like that's my good deed for the day, and I can be, as devious as I'd like to for the remainder of the evening.
Excellent use of devious. But yeah, you are just one with nature, rehoming bunnies left and right, saving them from, the dog. But I thought the cowboy pool was going to be the lead in there, which is still very exciting. Excited to see how that stacks up. I didn't know if that was just a summer project or if that was somehow related to the wedding in a few months, but excited to see how that turns out.
Yeah, just a summer project. We're like the only two people in Minnesota that don't have a cabin. And with the fourth approaching tomorrow, we wanted to try and get sort of this pool together for the weekend. And we'll see if we're successful on that front. We're sort of winging the whole thing. So, or we have TikTok to guide us. So
Yes,
I'll keep you posted on that. Maybe there will be pool updates in future episodes.
All righty. Can't wait. Well, on baseball front, did you see Clayton Kershaw got his 3,000th strikeout last night?
Yeah, to me, this seemed, like more of a win rather than an if. It's an amazing accomplishment. He has the best ERA plus of any pitcher who has recorded 3,000 strikeouts in MLB history. He's, an inner circle Hall of Famer at this point and could hang it up whenever he wants. What I really appreciated about the broadcast was the announcers just let the audience sort of soak in that moment. And I think for a lot of TV and radio announcers, the impulse is to have something to say. And, it was, I think, very professional for them to give it the requisite amount of excitement and then get out of the way and let you feel what it would have felt like to be in the stadium for that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. You can tell the class of the announcer, how they handle big situations like that. I agree. He did have one good line of open the velvet rope and let him in, something like that, a reference to the hall. So yeah, I was watching the beginning of that start and I'd kind of let it drift away because I didn't think he was going to make it long enough in that start. But I think they recognized the gravity of the situation facing the White Sox and hey, yeah, let's see. He's going to push it as far as he can go. This is his best chance to get it in this outing. So yeah, that was really awesome. I did see the discourse online about, is he going to be the last guy to ever reach this milestone?
I don't have enough of an informed opinion on that. I do think sort of, I don't want to just say blanket analytics, but sort of the way that we think about pitching now is sort of maximized on a per pitch basis. And what that is doing is reducing sort of the workloads of starting pitchers. This is a volume statistic. So maybe I don't have an active leaderboard of strikeouts, career strikeouts in front of me. It looks like Scully does on his phone.
I do. So Kershaw became one of 3 active players to do this feat or to reach this feat, Verlander and Scherzer being the others. The next closest is Chris Sale with 2,500, just a little bit over. Garrett Cole with 2,250. Charlie Morton with just over 2,100. And then Yu Darvish at 2,000.
I feel pretty comfortable saying Charlie Morton's not going to get there.
Yeah, I'll buy that. Same with Darvish.
I don't know about the other guys. How old is Sale? He's obviously out with a rib injury right now.
Yeah, he's 36.
Yeah, I don't know. Just with his history of injuries, if he had stayed healthy, this was pretty clearly in frame for him.
Yeah, so this has innings pitched next to it as well. So Kershaw has about 740 more innings pitched. So if, could Sale get there to that number as well? That's a lot of innings.
That is a lot of innings. I mean, on 160 innings a year pace, that's a little under 5 years of full healthy seasons, difference in innings pitched between Kershaw and Sale. So I wouldn't cross my fingers. Still, I mean, if Sale were to hang it up at the end of the year, still one of the greatest of my lifetime.
Totally. Absolutely. So if I had to put money on it, I'd say under, a half do this again. It's just not something that we don't see the longevity with starters like they used to. So awesome for Kershaw. This was one of the biggest milestones, the biggest milestone that will be achieved this year. I think Trout is approaching one as well from the home run perspective, but congrats to Kershaw. I know this is one that people were looking out for to happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah, super exciting. Also exciting is the Futures game is coming up. I believe that is next week, Saturday. We have the full rosters and we will be breaking them down on our next episode. For today, we're pretty strictly business with promotions. July also figures to be a pretty active month for promotions right around the All-Star break. We'll start seeing minor league guys shift, across levels of full season ball. We might also see guys jump from the complex to single A. So that'll be pretty exciting. But Scully, you have some numbers here on the rosters?
Yeah, all of it kind of relating to pipeline, because that's who put out a lot of the kind of stats around the futures game. There are 9 of the top 22 prospects and 31 of their top 100. So, you always look at the futures game rosters and say, oh man, that's stacked from, prospect name recognition perspective. So I had to kind of check myself thinking about that this year, but it really is absolutely loaded. We'll go into a deeper dive on maybe which side we like more, potential who could come away with, changing people's minds about them or stock rising type of things in a subsequent episode next week. But yeah, very exciting time. I found myself more interested in this roster than the actual All-Star game roster. But that's why we have a prospect podcast and not just a Major League Baseball podcast.
You know what? Excellent salient point. What I'll say about the futures game is from an evaluator's perspective, it's not particularly insightful. I've watched almost all of these guys, a considerable amount at this point, including, a number of them in person over the years. The other thing is, yes, it's 31 of Pipeline's top 100. Pipeline doesn't update as frequently. Baseball America just did their midseason update, and the Baseball Prospectus midseason 50 should be out sometime in the next few weeks, potentially after the draft. And I would wager that it's closer to 40 top 100 prospects per Baseball America on these rosters. Third unexpected thing that's kind of hit me, while I was speaking was I think the guys that are going to pop the most are those that are getting sort of public StatCast for the first time. Pitchers are going to be throwing just one inning and they can really air it out. So you're going to see some of these guys. Travis Sykora will touch triple digits 101 in a 1-inning sample. And he's not necessarily going to get more hype as a result, but that's the sort of performance that I think really grabs folks more in the public space. And if anybody hits, a big home run with underlying data publicly available, I know I'll be watching this with the Savant feed up for certain, but the futures game isn't really indicative of any future performance. And I think our listeners know that.
Yep. Just a lot of fun to see the best of the best get on the field at the same time, even if it's for a handful of at-bats or an inning on the mound.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing that we saw this week was Coby Mayo, his first career Major League home run. We were all sort of fist bumping. I was, at least, when I saw this, I did a little, internal, oh yeah. And then I saw it was off of Jose Caballero. So, it counts all the same.
Yeah, and he pimped it too. Granted, he got a hold of it, but it was a meatball that he saw. And I had to go double check after I wrote this in here that it was his first career, not just his first this year. It was his first career. So this was long overdue with a guy that just hasn't been able to put it together at the plate. But hey, maybe this will get him going.
Maybe it will. I actually haven't checked his game logs in a little while. I think the biggest win here is just that he's still up with the team, not being yo-yoed back down. Now, your mileage may vary. He could be sent back down tomorrow, as far as I'm aware, but he's still with the team as of 7:11 Central Time on Thursday, July 3rd.
Yes, confirmed.
Okay, we also have our national holiday prospect comps. We have some interesting national holidays. So, Scully, why don't you introduce us to your comp and the holiday that you chose?
Yeah, so the holiday that I chose, this is, again, for July 3rd, the Thursday. I did Fried Clams Day, was choosing between that or Eat Your Beans Day. So we each kind of chose our own adventure here. And path I went down, again, I'm a very literal person, not the most creative one you'll find, but I looked up where fried clams were sort of originated. Obviously knew it was the Northeast, and it was in Massachusetts. The only minor league team based in Massachusetts is Worcester, AAA for the Red Sox. And I thought this was a good time to check in on the password because he has been tearing it up since we talked about him getting promoted to AAA. In 34 games at the level, he's slashing 293, 367, 571 with 9 home runs, striking out 27% rate, and he's been playing mostly center field. Might be a corner infielder by the time he gets to the big leagues, but he has been doing it at AAA with ease and with comfort. So wanted to shout out, I'm going to give it a shot, Justinson Garcia, How bad was that?
Good enough for me.
All right.
Just to spell it, it's JHOSTYNXON. Yastingson.
Yes, with an exclamation point, as you need a special character at the end of most of your
Right. Yeah. $sign.
But yeah, that was my comp for the day. I wanted to, and we plan on doing some sort of retrospective once we have, a lighter agenda for a week to kind of look back at some of the performers for this year. Maybe something to do over the All-Star break when things are lighter. But this was just a good opportunity to check back in with a recently promoted friend.
Yeah, and when the year opened, I thought the password was one of the likelier prospects to be dealt at the deadline, assuming that this was going to be a good Boston Red Sox team and that they would be adding as, a leading team in the AL East. That has not been the case. And so I'm no longer of the mindset that the password will be dealt. This performance, though, if you were, sort of on the block, it's a good time to get hot, or at least front offices appreciate it when you get hot in the 6 weeks before the trade deadline.
Yeah, they might still just capitalize on it and move him anyway.
Yeah, they certainly could. He is an interesting prospect who I think has a chance to be like a solid average big league regular. I'm maybe one of the lower evaluators on Garcia, and even I'm starting to come around. So they could certainly get something for him. I don't know that they necessarily need to. It's unclear to me what the next good, like truly good Red Sox team looks like and whether he's a part of that. The outfield is a little bit too crowded.
Yep.
Okay. For my holiday, I did go with Eat Your Beans Day. And I took this in what I thought was a pretty interesting direction, which was Michael Arroyo, who we've talked a lot about recently. I did not realize that he has been beaned more than any player in minor league baseball this year, 25 times for the minor league lead. He has certainly eaten his beans this year, as it were. The other one that I just wanted to shout out is tomorrow is obviously the Independence Day in the United States. So we're recording one day earlier, and I felt like this was a good opportunity to talk about Rickey Henderson because he is, undisputedly the greatest MLB player to ever play independent league baseball, or at least post integration. Should throw that in there. Of the last 50 years or so, it's Rickey Henderson by a mile. So happy 4th of July to the listenership. Good opportunity just to remember Rickey, all-time steals leader, one of the coolest baseball players of all time. I think anybody who can refer to themselves in the third person and not have it be cringe, they've done something monumental.
Yes, absolutely. We need to always remember Rickey. I wanted to bring it back to Arroyo, though. Have you watched the film on him to figure out why he has been beaned at such a high clip? Is he just a crowd the plate type of guy, or is it just unlucky?
I think it's just unlucky. He's not a particularly big target,
No.
by any means. I know Luke Adams was also at the top of that leaderboard. He's a little bit Anthony Rizzo-ish, just a big target who stands close to the plate. Not necessarily the case for Arroyo. He's just been magnetic this year.
Magnetic is not usually referred with a negative connotation on it, but that worked perfectly.
He's been unfortunately magnetic. Okay, let's go into our top performers from the last week. This is sourced from the 3-cap that actually went live today. The pool and some work commitments with the holiday looming really delayed my column for the week. So that went out on the Dynasty Dugout, the 3-cap this afternoon. The top hitter of last week, so keep in mind, if you're listening to this on Friday, I'm talking about the previous week, was Colson Montgomery. And a little bit of breaking news. Finally, one of these sort of surprise promotions happens 10 minutes before we hit record. It's being reported, not confirmed by the team, that Colson Montgomery will make his major league debut tomorrow against the Rockies. Last week, he was exceptionally hot. He was 11 for 22 with 4 home runs, a triple, 2 doubles, 9 runs, and 8 RBI. In 55 AAA games, the line looks pretty ugly. He had a tremendously difficult stretch to open the year. And his line right now after 55 AAA games sits at 218, 298, 435. In sort of early mid-May, they sent him to the complex to work with their director of hitting. And since then, he has been fantastic. So, I know the total line doesn't look great, but over the last sort of 3 weeks or so, He's OPS'd almost 1,000. He's still striking out a fair bit over that time. He's striking out 42% of the time before he was sort of shipped unceremoniously to Arizona to get right. And since then, he's struck out 32% of the time. So while it is a large improvement, it's not particularly great. So I would expect him to scuffle a little bit against the best pitching in the world. I also, I'm cognizant that there's a lot of things to like about Colson Montgomery. He hits the ball very hard. His sort of plate skills and his bat to ball look totally reasonable to me. He has not gotten results over the last several years, and I'm sort of chalking that up to the extent that I can to injury. He has had back problems for quite a while. Never good when you're in your early 20s and your back is hurting enough to sort of throw you off of whatever you're doing. And last year, this wasn't sort of widely reported, but he was playing with an open wound on his hand. And I think, your hand is pretty instrumental to hitting. So some of the struggles that he had last year, I'm sure, were due to an open laceration on his hand. I think sort of before this news dropped, between when my column went live and when this news dropped that he was to be promoted, he was a pretty good buy for about 4 hours there, just because things were coming around. And I think the price on him has gotten so low that he could be had for really cheap. I like to target these guys that are close to promotion. Often they're not this close to promotion. And I think the further we get away from him going to Arizona and being hurt, the more attractive he could get. So sort of a speculative buy for a few hours there. Now you might be paying closer to full price.
Yeah, and I was checking what his defensive spread has been this year, because I thought the talk was kind of, is he too big for short? Does he need to move over to third? He's played almost entirely shortstop this year, so I'm not sure if that is the role they will have for him at the big league level, but that's, at least what he's been doing at AAA throughout this season. So that was always sort of another knock maybe on him, but this is a high-profile call-up to what's been a fun White Sox club this year.
Certainly more fun than last year. I'll grant you that. And I think they've called up some interesting talent. They've given, some of the reins in the rotation to young guys like Sean Burke and Shane Smith. And that has been fun. I think the most salient body comp for Colson Montgomery at the position, for me at least, is Corey Seager. Montgomery might, when he's not injured, be a little bit more athletic at this point in time. Seager's getting a little bit older. He has had similar injury issues. And for a long time, it looked like Corey might go the way of Kyle and play a lot of third base later in his career. That might still happen. I think that's a possibility for Montgomery as well. I have not, in full transparency, broken down a lot of defensive film of Montgomery recently. It sort of wasn't worth doing when his back was bad and his hand was all banged up. But it'll be interesting to see if he has the internal clock and motions and arm to play the position at the big league level. All right, from there we go to the top pitcher of the week. This is Troy Melton. He's a right-handed pitcher for in the Tiger system. He's at AAA. Last week, he threw 10 innings, allowed 9 hits, 2 walks, 2 earned runs, and he struck out 17 in that time. I have been sort of higher on Troy Melton than the consensus for a little while now. I preferred him to Ty Madden this time last year. Melton went on to have a relatively disappointing 2024 campaign. And this year has been a lot better in terms of run prevention, but all it has boiled down to is sort of home run fly ball luck. Last year, he ran like a 21% home run to fly ball rate, which is double league average. This year, it is well below league average, and it's led to sort of a 2-run delta in his ERA. So I think he's largely the same pitcher. What he does pretty well is I think his fastball is better than it's reported in most places. He sits upper 90s and he can, hum it in there up to 99. And I always, sort of prefer to build off of at least a solid average fastball, if not better.
Yeah, we actually had Melton on the agenda in our June 10th episode, but we scrapped him due to time. And I'd also read some scouting reports that had him as a relief pitching prospect, but that doesn't seem to be the case. I mean, they're using him as a starter, but the stuff could play up in a bullpen role, especially the way Detroit likes to manage via chaos in that way. So could be an eventual role for him, but he was a 4th-round pick in 22. And like you said, looked to have a breakout in 23 and then kind of backed it up in 24. And he's kind of back to doing 2023 Troy Melton stuff. So that line last week was really impressive. So we'll see if he can keep putting things together like that at AAA. He could be someone that comes and helps his team in September.
Yeah, for sure. I won't rule out the idea that he spends some time in the bullpen. The Tigers are one of the more creative teams in the league as far as this is concerned. It's really fastball changeup at this point. The changeup looks like it could land plus eventually. The slider really just does enough to keep hitters off balance. And we've seen some relievers really succeed with a good fastball and a good changeup, or some version of an elite off-speed pitch. I could see that being a potential off-ramp for Melton if it doesn't work out in the rotation. But, he's appeared in 15 games. He has just under 60 innings under his belt. That is about 4 innings an outing on average. It's a little fringy. So I can see the case for stretching him out and trying to see how this goes as a starter. I can also see the case for letting him let it fly over shorter samples. Okay, the last sort of player headliner from the 3-cap this week is a complex level pitcher. This is the Beck's buy. These are guys that are probably not on a lot of public radars, but are good investments right now. It is extremely rare that I sort of instruct people to invest a roster spot on a pitcher who has, 3 years of minor league marination left before they return any value. This is Stharlin Torres. His name, I'm going to spell it for you because there is a surprise consonant in there. It is Stharlin, and then last name Torres, Torres. He's a right-handed pitcher in Cincinnati system. Last week, he threw. He had one excellent start. He threw 4 innings, allowed no hits, no earned runs, 1 walk, and struck out 6. I think Johnny Kane got all the oxygen as far as complex level pitchers were concerned. I think Esteban Mejia is also interesting. Stharlin Torres belongs in that conversation. His ERA starts with the number 1. It's 1.54. He's striking out almost 33% of batters faced. He is walking under 4% of batters faced, which, puts his strikeout minus walk rate at an elite mark so far. Now, the ERA is definitely the factor of some luck. He has not given up very many home runs. Fly balls are not going over the fence. Batters have a 244 BABIP against him. His strand rate is really good. So I would expect some regression, but I really like what's going on under the hood, especially with his fastball. His fastball sits low 90s right now, 92, 94, but it gets pretty exceptional vert. Average IVB on that is right around 19 inches. And because he's so young, it's likely all of his stuff ticks up. The other thing that is sort of outlier about Torres is he's really good at locating his primary breaking ball, which is a curveball. That is a skill that we typically see with maturation, and he's already doing that. And then I think the changeup could trend towards average. So while it's primarily 2 pitches right now, it could be a fully sort of rounded out arsenal by the time he's in the upper levels of the minors, or at least I would expect it to be. I would like to see something like a cutter or a slider, something that runs more horizontally, both to get down and away against righties, sort of diving out of the zone, and to jam left-handed hitters or sort of back leg them. He already has the changeup that can sort of act as a platoon neutralizer. He has the great fastball. He just needs stuff that can keep guys off of his primary pitches as much as possible.
Very exciting profile. This seeing him in the 3-cap was my first introduction to Stharlin Torres. So I'm excited to hear you talk more about him, and someone that people should definitely be excited about.
This podcast kind of blows up my spot a lot because he's been on my watch list for several weeks now, but I haven't yet found an opportunity to pick him up. I'm very competitive in the league that Scully and I share right now, so it's not always the most prudent to pick up these sort of early season risers unless I'm confident that I can flip them for something. And I would be unsurprised if following the publish of the 3-cap and the release of this podcast, if he didn't last on waivers through the weekend. I'm looking at one primary suspect right now.
I know you're not talking to me, but I might do it. I might pull the trigger. I got a spot.
Yeah, it would be a good investment.
Yeah, maybe I will. Some of the other top performers I wanted to highlight from the 3-cap this week, one hitter, one pitcher per usual. I've got Joe Mack, catcher in the Marlins system at AAA. Last week at the Dish, he was 10 for 20 with 3 home runs and 5 RBI. Behind the dish, he also caught a combined no-hitter last week, which kind of furthers the point that he is a plus, maybe double plus defender back there behind the plate. Could eventually form a really interesting platoon with Agustin Ramirez, who is lacking behind the dish, but is really strong at the dish. But Joe Mack, to his credit, has held his own as a hitter this year, slashing 272, 351, 456 between double and AAA this year. And actually, while I was looking that up, I saw he had a 2 home run game this week. So he stayed hot, and he's been on a really good stretch as of late.
Yeah, I'm of two minds on Joe Mack. I think if you are the general manager or president of baseball operations for a Major League Baseball club, then yes, Joe Mack is a top 100 prospect right now. You will see that reflected on some of the more prominent industry rankings, namely Baseball America and Baseball Prospectus. He has also snuck his way onto some fantasy lists, which I don't understand. We can consider this sort of an open call for somebody to talk some sense into me because I'm not there with Joe Mack for fantasy purposes. He is an elite defender, or is at the very least going to stick at catcher at the big league level and play the position well. The problem for me is, yes, he started out blistering at AA. It was a 318, 464, 614 slash at AA. He was promoted after about 3 weeks in AA to AAA. And since then, he's OPS 686. His under the hood data looks like about average underlying pop with fringy bat the ball and swing decisions. Not a guy I would be betting on in a 12-team league as sort of a guy that is going to return value with the bat. I've yet to come across leagues, that really value defense in any way. So unless you're in a hyper niche, super specific, format that rewards, caught stealing or framing runs, probably not a guy that I would be investing heavily in, but he has been among the buzziest names in minor league baseball this year as a standout early in the calendar.
Yeah, if there were points for defensive runs or for catchers from the defensive position, then Patrick Bailey wouldn't be on the waiver wire in our league. But this might be one of those type scenarios. So good addition, interesting to think about the difference between real life and fantasy prospect lists. So good context there.
Also, genuinely, if anybody has like a good that can change my mind on this, please DM me on Twitter or DM the show on Twitter or leave a comment on YouTube or send me smoke signals because I truly want to understand this. I want to get better as an evaluator. If there's something that I'm missing about Joe Mack, I don't want to be, spreading lies, fallacies about what he could be as a hitter, but I'm not really understanding what the draw is.
Yep. The other name I wanted to talk about on the pitching side is Cam Schlittler, right-handed pitcher for the Yankees. He split time between double and AAA this year, and last week in AAA went 6 shutout innings, allowing 2 hits, 1 walk, and 9 strikeouts. He was promoted back in early June, so we may have missed that one, but he was a 2022 7th-round pick who's been getting some helium this year. In 14 games split between those two levels, he's up to 74 1/3 innings pitched, a 2.18 ERA, and 97 strikeouts to 25 walks in those 74 innings. So he's been shoving. He's been doing it at every level, and he's in AAA right now and had a really good week. So I wanted to call out that A, we missed somebody, and B, recognize that he's having a really good start to this season.
Yeah, for pitchers in particular, I'm a little bit more willing to buy sort of these late bloomers. Not to say that Cam Schlittler is necessarily the latest of bloomers, but he has been excellent this year. I think the difference is he's progressed physically since he was drafted. His stuff wasn't particularly loud. There wasn't a lot of punch out stuff there. I think now both his fastball and his slider, which is, a little bit sweeperish, grade as plus. They've played as plus pitches this year by results. I think the shapes are pretty good. And it's entirely reasonable, in my opinion, to consider Schlittler, at least for this period pre-draft, when we sort of get restocked with prospects in the top 100, to consider Schlittler as a top 100 guy or maybe borderline top 100 for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, very fun name.
Okay, we move to our MLB promotions section, and I do have maybe a little bit of a plug here. Did you see the throw that Colby Thomas, our first MLB promotion, made?
Oh yeah, textbook janitor throw.
Yes. So if you're not familiar with the janitor throw or Coach Kent Murphy, I will insert an audio clip here of sort of what the janitor throw is, what its purpose is, how to do it correctly.
The most important play in right field is what I like to call the janitor throw. Now what that is, it's when you do the crow hop into the diving throw. Guaranteed out every time. I call it the janitor throw because it cleans up the shit turds that are trying to take an extra base on you.
More of a visual example, I think your best shot is just looking up the YouTube video. It was a seed. Two, it was exactly how Kent Murphy would have described a janitor throw to all you kids and coaches. Thomas was a third-round pick in 2022 in 76 games this year. That was 310 at-bats. He was slashing 297, 365, 542 with 17 home runs, 70 RBI, which is preposterous. That's not a typo, correct? That is 70 RBI.
I'll confirm, but I don't think it's typo.
Okay. That is wild. On 162 game pace, that's like 150 RBIs. And 7 stolen bases. The big thing is he cut his strikeout rate this year to just 26%. He's walking 7% of the time. Hit tool is a little bit rough, but he's an athlete. He has exceptional raw tools, primarily the power. We've obviously seen the arm on display. This is a guy where if there's enough hit, if there's enough bat to ball and sort of swing decision acumen, he's going to do a lot of damage. This feels... And, I haven't really, this comp is kind of coming to me in the moment, but this feels a little Tyler O'Neill-ish to me.
Yeah.
And that's a vibes-based comp, but I think the production, in an average year where O'Neill is healthy could be similar in a top-end outcome for Colby Thomas.
Yeah, I think that's something to dream on too. I think the Athletics would be stoked with a Tyler O'Neill outlook here, especially if he could just be, marginally more healthy than that guy. That would be a really good profile to chase here. It does feel like one of those profiles that is going to struggle their first go around, as we've been seeing with a lot of guys. Their first taste of the big leagues is overwhelming, and he's one with questionable hit tools that could be overwhelmed pretty quickly. But he also could hit some tape measure shots out there. So a guy will be watching and see how this first taste goes for him, but clearly AAA wasn't challenging him at this point. So why not give him a shot?
Yeah, and he's made some serious improvements to both the bat to ball and the swing decision profile that have brought the K rate down. I don't know how sticky I expect those to be at the big league level. The jump from AAA to the majors is as big as it's ever been. What I was just pulling up is on their IL. Is there anybody coming back soon that is going to bump him off of the roster? It looks like Geloff is on the 60-day IL with Hammett surgery, and Miguel Andujar is on the 10-day IL. He's been on the 10-day IL for over a month. Injury date of June 1, 2025. So not sure when he's coming back. That's an oblique. I also don't know that Andujar is necessarily the piece that sends Colby Thomas back to AAA. So he could be here for a good little while. I think he represents more upside than most of the players on this roster.
Yeah, a lot of fun upside, kind of making an infusion into that lineup. So rooting for him because I think he could also hit one of those 450-foot tanks that we've been seeing some of those young athletics hitting. I know Max Muncy is kind of on a heater right now for them as well.
Well, we also saw Francisco Alvarez hit one 452 and get set down the next day. So
you're right. That is no longer the baseline to keep you at the big leagues. Maybe 460 is our number.
Or you have to do other things well, I guess.
The next guy we've got is Yanquiel Fernandez, outfielder for the Rockies. He was a 2019 IFA signing for just shy of $300,000 out of Cuba when he was 16 years old. So he's been on people's radar for many, many years now and is still obviously young. In a 33 games AAA sample last year, it was very poor to the tune of a 5.81 OPS, but he turned it around this year in nearly twice as many games, totaling 240 at-bats this year at AAA. He was slashing 284, 347, 502 with 13 home runs and a very reasonable strikeout to walk ratio. Talk to us about how the scouting looks on Fernandez, because I feel like he's been lauded as this massive power potential prospect.
The underlying data doesn't necessarily support, massive power. I think he gets to it a little bit more in games than you would expect. That has a lot to do with angles. So, for example, I would call a prospect like CJ Kafis probably bang on average in terms of raw power, but their power plays up in games as a result of getting to the pull side more often and putting the ball in the air with regularity. So I think at least to me, and again, other evaluators, if you are listening, let me know if you think about it this way, but raw power to me is how hard do you hit the ball? Just sort of a raw exit velocity reading. You can use max if you like. My preference, of course, is 90th percentile exit. There are other sort of benchmarks. Average is EV 50. Some outlets use EV 80. I use EV 90 because it trims out sort of misreads and things of that nature. It's also relatively predictive. For Fernandez, his 90th percentile exit velocity this year in just over 60 games at AAA is around 105.5. That is 2 ticks above the major league average. Last year, it was 103.4, which would be, around a standard deviation. That would put him at a 60 grade raw power tool, but he could get to much more of that in games, especially in cores. The problem with Fernandez, and this has sort of been his bugaboo for a while, is he's swinging. If he's in the box, he is swinging. He has a 38.5% chase rate. He is making plenty of contact both in and out of the zone. His zone contact rate is 83%. His overall contact rate is 76, but he's not going to have, I was just reading an article today about, Ted Williams and his sort of philosophy of hitting. And what he would say is Fernandez is swinging at too many pitchers' pitches. And you're going to produce a lot of outs that way. The other thing about Fernandez that is interesting is because he was signed at 16 and has sort of been in the public spotlight for so long, he feels like he should be much older than he is. I think if you had asked me this morning, how old is Yanquiel Fernandez? I might have said like 24. He's just 22. So there's still, a lot of developmental runway here for him. It'll be interesting to see how this goes at the big league level, given sort of his indiscretion when it comes to choosing pitches to swing at. But you couldn't ask for a better ballpark. This team should be able to give him a little bit of run. I don't know what their sort of IL situation looks like. But having him up, if nothing else, he's exciting.
Yeah, and they could certainly use an influx of fun over there in Colorado.
Yes, they could. They did the Brewers Blue, just a brutal extra innings game against them a couple days ago. And I about lost my mind because they are on pace to be the worst team in Major League history, breaking last year's sort of run by the White Sox. We do take it back to Milwaukee, so I'm not entirely off topic. Our next promotion is Anthony Seigler. He's sort of a utility man in the Brewers system, has played some catcher, has played some second base, has played some third base at Nashville. I think the idea here is that he can play some third base. The Brewers have been sort of struggling for third base production this year. And he's got a really cool story. He was drafted in the first round by the Yankees, the 23rd overall pick in 2018, which happens to be the year we both graduated college. So some time ago. Out of high school, he never made it beyond AA with the Yankees, and the Brewers took a shot on him. In 63 AAA games, he was slashing 277, 416, 465 with 7 homers, 4 triples, some wheels on this guy, 11 doubles, 20 stolen bases, again, the wheels, and a 51-49 strikeout to walk rate. I think the underlying data is a little interesting here. He looks a lot like a number of the guys running around on the major league team for the Brewers. The pop is not substantial. It's about 2 miles an hour lower than the big league average at 101.6, but he makes a lot of contact in the zone and he does not chase. He is very pesky. He has some defensive utility and he can run. He's, not a bad athlete. So this is maybe a guy who's a little bit more interesting for real baseball, sort of on the field baseball, but an interesting one to watch, I think, in deep leagues to see how much run he can get and potentially be sort of a doubles and stolen bases kind of guy.
Yeah, pesky is a good word to describe him, especially when you frame it as how many of these similar archetypes there are on the Brewers right now. I feel like they're just kind of churning and burning, trying to find whoever's going to have the hot hand and be that guy for them right now. But that's a profile you've had such success with over recent years. And so he could absolutely fall into one of those and be the pesky guy that no one really thinks about, but everybody wants on their team at the end of the day.
Yeah, the Brewers sort of do this team building thing where they say, all right, at least in past years, this year has been a little bit different, but in the Burns, Woodruff, Peralta years, it was, we're going to have dominant starting pitching. We're going to turn, these relievers into a weapon in the postseason, and we're going to play fantastic defense. We might not hit a lot, but we're going to manufacture runs. They've certainly been doing that this year. Seigler seems to be sort of that school of thought. I would not be surprised if Pat Murphy falls in love with this kid, similar to the way that he's done with Oliver Dunn and to a certain extent, Caleb Durbin so far this year.
Yep, absolutely. The next and final MLB promo we have to talk about is Shay Whitcomb, utility man for the Astros. He's played all over the diamond this year. He was Mr. Irrelevant in the shortened 5-round 2020 draft. So I thought that was a fun fact for Shay. And he's been tearing it up at AAA this year in the PCL. In 60 games, he was slashing 280, 360, 582 with 19 home runs, and he threw in 6 bags as well. Not sure if this is if he might be a non-prospect. He's 26, almost 27 years old. You won't find him on Pipeline's top 30 prospects for the Astros, but his numbers this year are really impressive and undeniable. He had a bomb of a home run last night in Colorado, but 19 home runs in AAA this year. There's some pop in the bat, and you took a look under the hood as well.
He's actually hitting the ball harder than Yanquiel Fernandez so far this year. It's marginal. It's just a couple tenths of a mile an hour. But I was surprised by that. And the sort of the plate discipline and bat to ball are perfectly cromulent, mid 80s zone contact, chase rate in the upper 20%. Neither are pristine for certain. And they're likely to do great at the big league level. He's had some struggles in a handful of games this year. We really make mention of him because what precipitated the promotion was a rib injury for Jeremy Pena. He'll be shelved for some time. And initially we thought this might be an opportunity for Bryce Matthews, who we've talked about recently. I don't think Matthews is sort of fully baked and ready to see big league pitching. There are some holes in his swing that are the kind of holes that get exposed at the big league level. So Whitcomb seems like a totally reasonable stand in there. He could be a nice deep league ad at shortstop, but shortstop is one of the deepest positions in the sport for fantasy purposes. So, this is one where we kind of say, I guess it's Shay Whitcomb and not Bryce Matthews.
Yep. A little disappointing, but good for the guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, hopefully he finds some footing because he was playing really well in AAA and both from a surface perspective and from an underlying data perspective. That will take us to AAA. We're going to be talking about a fan favorite, maybe one of the most divisive prospects in the sport. That is Spencer Jones, the 6'7" athletic freak, 80 grade adjusted athlete, outfielder in the Yankee system. He's going to be taking his talents to Scranton Wilkes-Barre and trying out AAA. I don't fully understand the purpose behind this promotion. His numbers look good in AA. The surface numbers do. In 49 games, 175 at bats. It was a 274 average, a 389 OBP, and an almost 600 slugging percentage. He did have 16 home runs and 10 stolen bases. The issue lies in his contact rate. His contact rate starts with a 5. That's like 15 points below the danger zone for me. And that just will not hold up against big league pitching. Something needs to change here. It's also reflected in his strikeout rate, 34%. If he had a contact rate that was around like 67%, 66%, and was striking out 29%, 28% of the time, he's like a global top 20 prospect. He is that powerful. He is impossibly fast for his frame. I've talked about him a ton. He was one of my favorite players in that draft. But right now, honestly, I think the Yankees are positioning him as a trade piece.
Yeah, and if that's the case, I just give him a chance to show that he can do this at AAA. But why not let him just put up gaudy AA numbers? It's not like there's an environmental swing. I'm making that up. There might be between wherever they play double and AAA, but I don't think there's anything dramatic. So let him keep building up that profile. If anything, drop the K rate a little bit.
Yeah.
Really juice those numbers if you wanted him to be trade bait, which he likely is. That's not a loaded farm system and a team that is expected to be relatively active at the deadline. So likely guy to move, but holy cow, is there the most upside in the world looking at a guy like this, but also the likelihood of him putting it together enough to be a contributor. Yankees prospects don't make it to the big leagues anyway. Very few and far between. So not like he really is probably expecting to debut in a Yankees uniform. But yeah, massive ceiling on Jones, and you would need it to fit him in the room.
Yes, you would. It's not hugely surprising that he has sort of these bat to ball struggles. He is enormous. He has a large strike zone to contend with. He has really long levers. He's also, and I've talked about this on other podcasts, but his sort of the difference between his actual age and his baseball age is pretty stark. He was not a full-time hitter in college until his platform year. He also missed some time with Tommy John surgery. And so in terms of just raw reps hitting, is far fewer than sort of comparable player his age. And the frame makes things really difficult. So I'm confounded by the promotion because I feel like if you were to trade him, it's best to just let him sort of figure it out at AA and maybe improve on some of the bat to ball stuff. I think you're sort of risking an implosion here based on the canaries in the coal mine, as it were.
Yeah, well, we'll find out his fate here in a handful of weeks as the deadline approaches. But now we'll move into our second and final AAA promo in Kohl Drake, left-handed pitcher for the Rangers. He was an 11th round pick in 2022 out of community college, and he's put up a good stat line this year in 12 starts at AA, 55 and a third innings, 2.44 ERA, 70 strikeouts to 22 walks in those 55 innings, and a sub-1 whip. It's three. The fastball is the best pitch, and then three others are kind of average, and he pairs that with above-average command. So Kohl Drake is someone who might not be super sexy, but he's putting together a good season, and it's a solid profile.
Yeah, I like Kohl Drake. I think his ceiling is relatively capped. He is sort of a deception guy. The fastball is his best pitch, but it's not a plus pitch by any means. He has, a 4-pitch mix that is pretty reasonable overall, but this is not a guy. His numbers might suggest that this is sort of a top rotation outcome. It's more like a 4 or a 5. He does benefit pretty greatly from the fact that he's a lefty. I think if he were a right-handed pitcher, the outlook would be significantly different. There's sort of this, and some writers have gone to lengths to quantify this, but it's the LUB, the LUB, the left-handed unfamiliarity bonus, because most of the pitching you're going to see is right-handed, and so you see the splits sort of league-wide against right and left-handed pitchers to be just a little bit different, and that's certainly at play with Drake. The deception helps, but he could be a nice depth piece in a deep league. It would be sort of unsurprising to me if he were to find success at the big league level for a little while as a starter. But I don't think this is a sort of a game-changing profile for fantasy.
Yep.
Okay, we head down to AA with a pitcher that we talked about very recently. This is Travis Sykora, right-handed pitcher for the Washington Nationals. He's on his 4th level of the year. Before getting the bump to AA, he pitched in 6 games at high A and was largely untouchable. Over 29 and 2/3 innings, he pitched to a 1.21 ERA with 47 strikeouts and just 8 walks. In his AA debut, he was touched a little bit. He walked 5 batters. It was not the prettiest performance. And the last time we talked about him, we said, I don't really know how quickly the Nationals are going to push him. It was clear that high A was not giving him sort of the competition that he needed. Maybe water is going to find its level a little bit at AA, but I think we still need to wait a little bit to see, are they going to race him through double and triple and try to get him big league innings to end this year? Or is this sort of a Bubba Chandler-ish timeline for next year?
Yeah, and I think when we were talking about the rate at which Washington would push him, we talked about how their window for competing, some thought it was going to be more this year, that they could be one of those fun, scrappy teams. Some people on this podcast have a win total ticket over for the Nationals this year. That's not going to pay out. And their future competitive window looks further out maybe than people thought. So we kind of came back to that point on Sykora, saying, why would they rush him? You know, it's a guy that was dealing with injuries last year. Let him build up the confidence, but also keep the health. So maybe he's found his level that he needs to be pitching at this year to get things to work on and learn from. I don't want to overreact from one poor outing at AA. So we'll get plenty more information on Sykora. He still remains one of the more quickly rising pitching prospects in the game right now.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. It's reasonable to have him in a conversation as a top 3 pitching prospect in the sport. The Nationals are pretty fascinating because I think there's a non-zero chance they trade Mackenzie Gore at the deadline. He has 2.5 years of control. It would be another haul. It doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense to, sort of hold him through highs and lows. He's pitching extremely well. I'm not sure I necessarily buy it at this level moving forward. So if you can cash out and think, the best is yet to come from our young bats, that might be the most prescient thing to do at this time. And I just think the next month or 6 weeks for the Nationals are going to be really revealing. They also pick first overall in the draft, and that will tell us a little bit about their intentions for the deadline as well.
Yeah, with how many college arms there are at the top of this class, could see them going that route and trying to get someone that they could push through the minors quickly to be a part of a near-term competitive team. But man, a Gore move would be very interesting. Not sure if that would be the route I would take if I were the Nationals, but in what is seeming to be a light sellers market, more buyers than sellers, someone might be coming with a price that you just can't turn down. So yeah, I would understand if they did it because it would likely have come with a massive package.
That's sort of what I'm thinking, is the return might just be too tempting to pass up. The Brewers are sort of in a similar situation. Now, they're more in it than the Nationals are. As of yesterday, they were 2.5 games back of the division. And some people thought maybe they would trade Freddie Peralta. I think it is not exactly the same situation for the Nationals, but the situations rhyme. It would be interesting to see if they take somebody like Kate Anderson or Jamie Arnold or Liam Doyle, potentially underslot. at that first pick and just pick up talent along the way, that might signal to me, hey, we're really looking at a top 3 of our rotation that starts with Mackenzie Gore, goes to Travis Sykora, and then whichever sort of college arm they take with the first pick in the draft. Also rumored at that spot are players like Ethan Holiday and Eli Willits. This is a very wide open draft, and I just think that the Nationals might telegraph a little bit of their intentions 2 weeks before the trade deadline.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep our ear to the ground, figure that out. While we're talking draft, we'll go to the next guy, Charlie Condon, first base outfield prospect for the Rockies. He was the 3rd overall pick last year out of Georgia, was in heavy contention for the 1st overall pick as well. And he had a very disappointing debut sample in 25 games last year, but has turned it around and looked like that top 3 pick that he was lauded as this year. 35 high A games. He was slashing 312, 431, 420 with 3 home runs and 35 strikeouts to 26 walks. So the power isn't necessarily translating maybe as people expected it to, but Charlie Condon is coming around, playing a lot better, and you're seeing people really yo-yo his name up and down lists. Last year it was, holy cow, what a bust already. 25 games, people were throwing him out of lists, and now people are jamming him right back to the top. So how do you feel about Condon's stock right now, and what are you seeing in the profile?
I put Condon sort of in the middle of my top 100. I thought he was going to be a slam dunk number 1 in FYPDs. He had obviously that pretty challenging pro debut in the second half of last year, and then suffered a wrist injury in spring training. He had a broken wrist. More specifically, it was a non-displaced fracture of the left wrist. The technical term is a radial styloid process fracture. I have no idea what that means, but for those of you that do, maybe that's helpful for you. I'm sort of the opinion that we're judging him a little bit too early. There were some rumors that he was hurt after the draft. He played a very long college season, broke the BB Core era home run record in his time at Georgia. And you know, the wrist injury also delayed his 2025. So now might actually be a really excellent buying window for him. I haven't really changed maybe where I would have him in overall ranks. I think you can buy him for much cheaper than, say, a top 50 prospect. And that should be attractive to most people, especially given the future home park.
Yep, totally.
All right. We are staying in Colorado for Jared Thomas. Save some first names for the rest of us, Jared Thomas. He was a 2nd-round pick in last year's draft out of Texas. In 73 high A games this year, it's 291 at-bats, slashing a pretty preposterous 330, 427, 495 with 11 home runs, 45 RBI, 13 doubles, 22 stolen bases. So a little bit of power speed there. The slugging was just a little under 500, 23% strikeout rate versus a 13% walk rate. This was a guy, even though he went in the 2nd round, was not super on my radar coming into the year, but I did write about him in a previous 3-cap as somebody standing out early on. I think he's still somebody that you can get in on relatively early. Now, I haven't really sat with the idea of what does this look like at the big league level. I think we'll learn a lot more against AA competition than we did high A. But with this kind of surface performance, there's certainly helium to follow, especially if he continues playing at this caliber at AA.
Yeah, a lot of fun with these two guys moving together. I feel you see Colorado take the approach very arm heavy in drafts because no free agents ever want to go there. But they kind of mixed it up last year and went with 2 college bats as their first 2 picks. And those guys are obviously moving together and looking really fun. So that could be, we'll see if it's a win, but looking really good for the Rockies right now, and we'll see how those 2 perform at AA and if they keep moving together as a package.
Yeah, I'm looking at his baseball reference page. There is sort of, I think, commentary coming from this for both Condon and Thomas. The thing to know is they were playing in Spokane. Spokane is very hitter friendly. and is certainly inflating some of the results here. They will go to Hartford, which has tended to be sort of slamming the door on these guys. Hartford is a difficult place to hit. And so Condon, if you're not willing to buy after he's been better now that he's healthy, wait a little bit. And if he struggles in Hartford, which, would not be unlikely given how challenging it is to hit there, maybe in a month would be a better buy opportunity. Alternatively, if you are rostering Thomas right now and you're trying to sell at peak value, he's currently 0 for 7 with 4 strikeouts with Hartford. That might continue. It is a difficult place to play your baseball. So always helpful to remember park effects. Spokane is one where, and we saw this sort of with Ezequiel Tovar, where he went off in Spokane and then hit a wall in Double-A. We might have also seen, I don't have Yanquiel Fernandez's baseball reference page open, but I would be unsurprised to see that be the case for him too. Hartford has a little bit of a chilling effect on these guys often.
Interesting. Okay. Well, we'll see how that goes for them there. That kind of raises an interesting question, because we talk about high A being, pretty status quo for ML or for college bats coming out, and like they should handle that level just fine. But Double-A is usually where you see things jump up, and that change is pretty significant. Is it almost worth sending them to Triple-A to avoid that type of stark change, or is it just one of those, got to eat your beans?
Yeah, I think you just got to eat your beans. I do think it is important as prospectors or people interested in sort of movement among both fantasy and real life rankings, as much as we might want to get away from things that aren't predictive, like surface stats. Some surface stats, others are predictive. I don't mean to sort of throw shade at stat-driven models. But it is important to understand the context of where these games are played. And Hartford is just one that I keep an eye on, particularly for the Rockies, because they're one of the few systems that have such a stark difference between one level and the next. Seattle is very similar. We've talked a lot about Funko Field at Everett just being a ridiculous ballpark in terms of dimensions. And then Arkansas being a much more difficult place to play. Similar story for Colorado.
So maybe if you're interested in checking in on these guys and players in Hartford and other areas like that, might we recommend the WRC Plus stat that is ballpark adjusted and would give you a better feel for how they're performing apples to apples to others in that area and level?
Yeah, the other piece of this, and this is just hitting me now, is jumping them directly to AAA would just put them in the PCL.
Right, yeah.
And that might not be, I guess if you're really trying to sell a guy, maybe you go, hey, Spokane to AAA. We don't want you to work through anything at the AA level. Maybe if you think they can handle AAA competition, but that feels like a lot of extra steps for what may be marginal and like works in theory, but not in practice.
And they also don't play all of their games at Hartford. Obviously, all their home games, but they will go on the road and play in some normal ballparks. So there's our ballpark conversation for the day. I'll move us into our next Double-A promotee, Kaelen Culpepper, shortstop in the Twins system, also a member of the 24 draft class. He went 21st out of Kansas State. He was also someone we may have missed in the recent weeks. He was promoted on June 21st to the level, but we threw him into the agenda for this week. And he very much so deserved that promotion through 64 games at high A. He was slashing 293, 384, 473 with 11 home runs, 2 triples, 9 doubles, 17 bags, kind of doing it all from the stat sheet perspective, and a very respectable 50 to 32 strikeout to walk ratio. So one of those college bats holding his own and more at high A. And sticking at shortstop so far, I've heard that's something that's expected to continue. But what else do you have on Culpepper?
Since landing in Double-A, and we're going to do a little bit more ballpark talk, or at least sort of league adjustments. The Twins Double-A affiliate is the Wichita Wind Surge. They are in the Texas League. The Texas League also tends to be very friendly to hitters. at least, more so than the early months of the calendar in the Midwest League. So strong performance for him opening the year since he joined Wichita. It's 10 games, 47 plate appearances, slashing 293, 383, 439. The power's fallen off just a little bit. This isn't a huge sample, so it doesn't really mean much, but he is pretty firmly hit over power. And I think the concern for Culpepper is he sort of line drives, doubles, gap to gap right now. And if he has to move to third for any reason, does he have enough bat in terms of the sort of pop that you typically expect from that position? That could become a little bit of an issue for him, but playing really well so far. He was just put in some top 100s sort of across the industry. I agree with that, especially from a points perspective. He looks like sort of a batting average on base guy who could rack up a lot of counting stats, primarily walks and runs, both of which happen to score points in points formats. Okay. Oh, the other thing I was noticing was he's not running like an outlier BABIP, at least at AA. I do want to check on the full season.
Yeah, it's a good thought.
It's 328, which is not out. So most of this is not necessarily buoyed by, he doesn't hit the ball all that hard. So you might expect that a better batting average would come as a result of luck on balls in play. Not so much the case. He has also swiped 17 bags. He is a pretty good athlete. Just not a lot of raw pop.
Yeah.
Okay. We will move on from Kaelen Culpepper to our last AA promotion. That is Esmerlyn Valdez. We have him as a hybrid outfielder / one base. Scully, do you have in front of you first base? Do you have in front of you sort of the split of playing time so far?
I will while you read the rest of them.
Okay, he was a 2021 international signee out of the Dominican Republic in 72 games at high A so far this year. It's 277 at bats, slashing 303. On base percentage was 385. Slugging almost starts with a 6, 592. He has hit 20 home runs this year, which is, a remarkable figure. 57 RBI, 18 doubles, 77 strikeouts in those 72 games. 31 walks. What do you got for me on the defense there?
44 games in a corner outfield, 14 at first, 17 at DH.
Okay. Yeah, I think he's not a guy that you're going to get in on for the defense. It's a lot of raw pop. Last year at single A, over 107 games, he hit 22 home runs, slugged 464. Those numbers are way up this year between Greensboro and Altoona. If you're ready for more ballpark talk, Greensboro is a pretty nice place to hit as well. So that might account for some of this, but 20 home runs in 74 games is pretty nice. The strikeout rate, it's 77 strikeouts in 74 games overall. It's 322 plate appearances. That might become an issue as he climbs. It's not the greatest bat to ball in the world. I do want to pull up his Fangraphs page just to get the contact rate there. But while I'm doing that, I think this is a guy that I have not seen on sort of touted highly on a lot of public rankings, and might be a guy that you can get in on early and sort of capitalize on the surface stats here. His overall contact rate in minor league baseball this year is 72.1%. Last year, it teetered right around 70%. And in previous places, in 2023 at single A, it was right around 60%. So he's made gains in the bat to ball, but still a little bit fringy. He doesn't have a ton of defensive value, already limited to a corner, both in the infield and in the outfield. So the bat is going to have to do the playing here. And there is risk of hit tool collapse, but for now, he's one of the hottest prospects in minor league baseball.
Yep. He was a large riser in Chris Clegg's updated June rankings. I was actually between him and someone else on who to pick up, and I went with the someone else. But Valdez is someone that was certainly on my radar, and kind of wish I would have done him now. I guess I still can with that promo to AA, kind of bolstering his profile and recognition. But very exciting profile nonetheless.
Out of curiosity and, Scout's honor, I will not make a competing claim. Who was the other guy you were deciding between?
I already picked him up. I think it was Braxton Bragg.
Oh, yeah. Okay. He was on minor league IL for a little bit. He just came back.
Yes, and he rose. I think the change was about the same, but Bragg was in a higher tier than Valdez. So, and I'm a sucker for a pitching prospect. So,
yes, this is true. The points leagues pitching prospects tend to reign supreme. So, sort of unsurprised by that choice, and I'm glad that I don't even have the temptation to poach that waiver wire claim.
Thank you. I think moving into our last guy here, someone whose name we've brought up on the pod before, but this is his first promo of the year. It is Johnny King, promoted off the complex to low A, left-handed pitching prospect for the Blue Jays. He was their third-round pick in 2024 out of high school, so makes a trio with Savage and Steven from the 2024 pitching ranks drafted by the Blue Jays, who are having great years. I'll let you wax poetic about King because I know he's someone that you've had your eye on all season.
Yeah, if you're not in on Johnny King yet, it might be too late. He was, I think, by far and away considered the best pitcher at the complex. There's been sort of a later push for Esteban Mejia, right-handed pitcher in the Orioles system. But, King getting the bump to full season ball, he pitched extraordinarily well in the complex. And really it's a mid-90s heater that is pretty premium velocity for his age. It also has pretty decent shape. It's coming from a left-handed release. So he's getting that lub, that left-handed unfamiliarity bonus. He also has a really beautiful low 80s curveball, and those two pitches are doing the majority of the work there. If you have not jumped on him yet, I think, the ship has really passed you by. Okay. Well, that's what we have for you today. I'm going to make one last plea. We do spend a lot of time putting these together. I think across the 9 episodes that we have put out so far, we've recorded about 15 hours of content, an hour and a half. In each episode, just about. There's also like an hour and a half of prep. Often we're on the phone for 45 minutes before we even hit record just to tighten up the agenda. And Scully spends a good amount of time putting together all of the promotions from the last week. So this is my plea to you. If you are still listening an hour and 15 minutes in, and it's okay if you're not, you're never going to hear this. Please rate and just hit the follow button on either streaming service. I can't tell you how tremendously helpful that is for other people looking for minor league baseball coverage. We really want to get this to a place where, we have 500 downloads per episode. Right now, we're pulling in around 200. Shout out to Eric Cross for giving us a nice bump from my appearance on his podcast. The other thing I will say is we're starting to think about guests. And we certainly have our own wish list. We've texted back and forth about who makes the most sense to come be on the pod. If you would be so kind, just leave a comment of who would be the best listen. Who do you think meshes with us the best? Who do you want your takes on as guys are changing levels? That is tremendously helpful for us, and we'll try to make your dreams come true on that front.
Yes. Shout out the PP heads. Still listening, an hour and 15 in.
You're the real PP heads. We appreciate you. All right, Scully. It's been great. Love you. Bye.
It's been real. Love you. Bye.